What is up, everybody? Welcome back to King's Advisors. Tonight, I should say, we've got some Game of Thrones stuff to talk about. So we knew a while back that, well, we've known for a while now that George was not happy with the way that Ryan Condal did both Blood and Cheese, leaving out Maelor, and several other decisions that they made along the way. And he promised us, I think it was about a week ago, maybe two, that he was going to get more into it. And this was after, like, 2 weeks before the finale, dropping a scorcher of blog post talking about how dragons don't migrate and all this stuff that seemed to lead up to him talking about how Ryan had made some decisions that were really going to take away from the story that he wrote. Even though Fire and Blood is not a narrative story, and it's more of a history book, it's still his story. It's still the story that he chose to tell for a specific reason. And so with Ryan and the HBO creative team seeming to decide to just kind of get rid of elements of his story, it's confusing and disturbing at best. So before we kind of dive in, let's refresh ourselves. So let's look back at George's. He's got so many blog posts. Again, he can find time to write his fucking blog, but he can't find time to finish the damn book we've been waiting 14 and a half years for. But I digress. Okay, let's look at his not a blog post from July 11th at 7:06 a.m. Okay, here we go. Let's zoom in here. Here there be dragons. So this is the one where he's talking about how they've changed dragons and they've changed how they migrate and stuff like that. Let's see. I wanted to Tolkien, Smaug, Dragonheart, love Dragonheart. In A Song of Ice and Fire, I set out to blend the wonder of epic fantasy and the gritness of the best historical fiction. There's magic in my world, yes, but much less of it than one gets in most fantasy. Tolkien's Middle-earth was relatively low magic too, and I took my cue from the master. I wanted Westeros to feel real, to evoke the Crusades and the 100 Years' War and the War of the Roses, as much as it did JRT and his hobbits and magic rings. I would have dragons, yes, but in part because my dear friend, who cares? 2 legs. This is where we talk about how, where he talks about how the sigil that they use in season 7 and moving forward in Game of Thrones was the incorrect dragon. If you might be able to see behind me, but I've got House Targaryen, their banner behind me, and it's the correct dragon. So I'm not gonna be able to pronounce it correctly. Wyvern. They have 2 legs. They do not have 4 legs. And since season 7 and in some of the promotional material in HBO or in House of Dragon, they use a 4-legged dragon on the sigil, which is incorrect. Small issue. That's not that big of an issue. George can get past that, and he has. It's the first time he's really brought it up. Then we get into the conversation about how, here we go, Weirvins. That's how you say it. Then we get into the conversation about, where is it? Here we go. My dragons are predators, carnivores, who like their meat well done. They can and will hunt their own prey, but they are also territorial. They have layers as creatures of the sky. They like mountaintops and volcanic mountains best of all. Yada, yada, yada. Talking about how they had tower tops of the Valyrian Freehold, the Dragon Pit and King's Landing, and that they had the underbelly of Dragonstone. My dragons are creatures of the sky. They are not nomadic. During the heyday of Valyria, there were 40 dragon riding families with hundreds of dragons amongst them. But aside from our Targaryens, All of them stayed close to the freehold in the lands of the long summer. From time to time, a dragon rider might visit Volantis or another Valyrian colony, even settle there for a few years, but never permanently. Think about it. If dragons were nomadic, they would have overrun half of Essos, and the Doom would have only killed a few of them. Similarly, the dragons of Westeros seldom wander far from Dragonstone. Elsewise, after the 300 years, we would have dragons all over the realm, and every noble house would have a few. The 3 wild dragons mentioned in Fire and Blood have lairs on Dragonstone. The rest can be found in the Dragon Pit of King's Landing or in the deep caverns under the Dragon Mount. Luke flies Arax to Storm's End and Jace to Winterfell, yes, but the dragons would not have flown there on their own, save under very special circumstances. You won't find dragons hunting the Riverlands or the Reach or the Vale or roaming the Northlands or the Mountains of Dorne. And that was the big cue, in my opinion, to everyone. Like I said at the beginning, this post came out on July 11th. That was, I think, the 5th day or two after the 5th episode of Game of Thrones. And we were all very concerned because we hadn't seen anything of Nettles. And it seemed like they were trying to push her story onto Rhaena Valerian instead of actually having Nettles in the damn story. Fantasy needs to be grounded. It is not simply a license to do anything you like. Smiling and Toothless may both be dragons, but they should never be confused. Ignore canon and the world you create comes apart like tissue paper. And that was an attack straight at Ryan Condal. And anyone that thinks it wasn't, anyone that thinks he was just trying to make a statement about him wanting his story to be told his way is wrong. This and the blog post that we're going to talk about later today have been direct shots at Ryan Condal and the HBO team because they have changed his story, removing Nettles, removing Maelor, having dumbing down Blood and Cheese, and not having Helena pick. And it's just completely changed the story. Now, it's true that there's small changes and little things. Sometimes they don't matter. But as we saw, and as George wrote pretty well in his blog post today, the butterfly effect happens. And because this thing doesn't happen, or this thing doesn't happen, or this thing doesn't happen, the a huge event that should happen in the 3rd season apparently is going to happen for no other reason than because they have to make it happen. What's up, Damien? How you doing, man? For some reason, PFPs are not popping up today. I don't know why. So that's my thoughts on where we were up to about, let's say, August 28th. So August 29th comes around. And if anyone isn't aware yet, I'm pretty damn excited for Aegon's Conquest. I think this show is going to kick ass, even with the annoyance and the sadness that I have towards House of Dragon Season 2. I think everything we've heard from Madison Tomlin on adapting the first, I think it's like 3 or 4 chapters of Fire and Blood into the show, everything I've heard, I'm really excited about. And so we get this then. This is from an interview that I forget who, probably Variety, did with, or Nexus Point News did with Madison Tomlin on Aegon's Conquest. So it was an interview that they did about the Terminator show that he just finished, that actually just launched on Netflix last weekend, I believe. And so he does this interview, and he says, it starts with what George has done. I've now gotten to spend quite a bit of time with him, and there have been a lot of pinch me moments of just kind of going through Fire and Blood, highlighting passages and asking him, what does this mean? What is this? What I think it is, You know, sometimes really grilling. Okay, sorry, I'm going to have to turn my head and read it over here. You know, sometimes really grilling him, going, I don't understand. What happened? What's happening here? And then other times going, I think that it could mean this, but but it's really talking. Jeez, I cannot read today. Sorry, guys. I'm going to have a flipping stroke. I don't understand what's going on here. And then other times going, I think that it could mean this. But it's really taking that text and treating it like it's real history. That's one of the things that my approach to it was. Fire and Blood is written like a real history, and these things happen. We know the history of Alexander the Great. We know the history of Napoleon. We know what the battles were. We know a lot of the people who died. We know in some cases what was said or what might have been said, but we don't know everything. We don't know all of it. We kind of have these flagpoles that tell us this is how we march through history. But then also there's that great quote that somebody much smarter than I said: history is written by the people who won. And so then there's that as well. For me, it's about making sure that I respect George and I respect the text. And then also, it still has to be a dramatic story. Those characters have to go on a journey. They have to change. They have to go from a beginning to a middle to an end. Figuring out how to do all that with the clues that that textbook has left for me, and go, okay, I'm going to interpret this very real history and try to make it a really vivid show that hopefully people love and don't hate, doing the best I can. Why does this matter? It's just a puff piece about a job he has. Well, it matters because he's sitting there basically just saying, George is the reason all this works. This doesn't happen without George. We don't get to this world without George. And contrast that with a podcast that Ryan Condal just did that literally wasn't supposed to come out. This is the official podcast of House of the Dragon. And they had told everyone like 2 or 3 weeks ago, 4 or 5 weeks ago, actually, I think, that they were going to have one more episode. And then that was going to be it until season 2, or season 3 ramps up or whatever it is. Except that wasn't it. This shocking episode drops today. And what's interesting about this is it's like an hour and 20. Let's see how long it is. It is a 45-minute conversation with Ryan Condal and the two hosts, which are Jason Concepcion and Greta Johnson. And he doesn't mention George R.R. Martin once. How can you not mention the creator of the world that you're writing in, that you're trying to produce a show for, and not mention him once? Like, that blows my mind. How can you do that? So you go from Mattson Tomlin, who hasn't even really gotten into the world yet, who hasn't really become a name for the show, for Aegon's Conquest yet, kind of gushing over George and talking about how important it is to understand what you're writing and the need and the desire that telling the story in both a gripping but a factually correct way, in the way that George wrote it. It's like apples and oranges almost. It's shocking to me how big Ryan Condal's head has gotten. So let's move on to the star of the show, the coup de grace. Today's post by George R.R. Martin. Now, he's taken this post down. And for anyone that wants to know, spoilers are ahead. We're going to go through this whole post. I've got about 45 minutes left on this stream before I have to go do some stuff tonight. And so we're going to go through this post and just kind of talk about it. Back in July, I promised you some further thoughts about Blood and Cheese and Maelor the Missing, after my commentary on the first 2 episodes of Hot D, Season 2, A Son for a Son, and Renewed the Cruel. Those were terrific episodes, well-written, well-directed, powerfully acted. A great way to kick off the new season, and I agree with that. They were very good episodes, if you didn't read the book. Fans and critics alike seem to agree. There was only one aspect of the episodes that drew significant criticism: the handling of blood and cheese, and the death of Prince Jaehaerys. From the commentary I saw online, opinion was split there. The readers of Fire and Blood found the sequence underwhelming, a disappointment watered down from what they were expecting. Viewers who had not read the book had no such problem. Most of them found the sequence a real gut punch, tragic, horrific, nightmarish, etc. Some reported being reduced to tears. I'm not sure it was that bad. I found myself agreeing with both sides. In my book, Aegon and Helena have 3 children, not 2. The twins, Jaehaerys and Jahara, are 6 years old. They have a younger brother, Maelor, who is 2. When Blood and Cheese break in on Helena and the kids, they tell her that they are debt collectors come to exact revenge for the death of Prince Lucerys, a son for a son. As Helena has 2 sons, however, they demand that she choose which one should die. She resists and offers herself. She resists and offers her own life instead. But the killers insist it has to be a son. If she does not name one, they will kill all 3 of the children. To save the life of the twins, Helena names Maelor. But Blood kills the other brother, Jaehaerys, instead, while Cheese tells little Maelor that his mother wanted him dead. Now, picture that. You know, I wish I had it, but there's an old skit. I don't think it was SNL, but there was an old skit where these robbers break into this house, and they basically do this. They yell at the mom, pick one of your kids, pick one of your kids. And she points to one of the kids, and the robbers like come in, they take their mask off and says, your mother wanted you to die. Just think about that now. And then they leave. And that's very much what this was. It was, now again, like George says here, whether the boy is old enough to understand, that's not at all certain. 2 years old probably doesn't understand. But that's a pretty powerful event. And as we see later on, that event has repercussions, not just in the immediate, in the fact that Jaehaerys dies, but it affects Helena throughout the story, throughout the rest of her story, I should say. That's not how it happens in the show. There's no Maelor in House of the Dragon, only the twins, both of whom look younger than 6. Don't care about that. Blood can't seem to tell the twins apart, so Helena is asked to reveal which one's the boy. And, you know, he's right here. You would think a glance up the PJs would reveal that. Instead of offering her own life to save the kids, Helena offers them a necklace. Blood and Cheese are not tempted. Blood saws Prince Jaehaerys' head off. We are spared the sight of that. A sound effect suffices. In the book, he lops the head off with a sword. It is a bloody, brutal scene, no doubt. How not? An innocent child was being butchered in front of his mother. And I like George, I still believe that the scene in the book is better. It's stronger. It evokes more of a depraved sense. I mean, just anyone that's ever, cut meat before can kind of visualize how gruesome and how let's say crazy doing that can be. But it's true that the sound effect was pretty good, and showing if I remember correctly, there's it's just the sound effect. So the lack of disgust, I think, kind of hurts the whole scene. I feel like there needed to be more. I don't know what it needed to be. I don't know if you needed to see something. You don't necessarily need to see it. But there needed to be something more. And to be fair, I think we got some of that in, I think it was the next episode, where we actually see them attaching the head back. And then, you see young Rhaenyra attaching the head. Like, all that stuff kind of compounded onto that scene. But the fact that we had to wait until, I think it was like episode 3 or 4 to get all of the emotion. It's kind of lazy writing, in my opinion. I still believe the scene in the book is stronger. The readers have the right of that. The two killers are crueler in the book. I thought the actors who played the killers in the show were excellent, but the characters are crueler, harder, and more frightening in Fire and Blood. In the show, Blood is a gold cloak. In the book, he's a former gold cloak who was stripped of his office for beating a woman to death. Now show that. Do other there's so many things they could have done to make us hate Blood and Cheese more than just having Cheese kick a dog. Like the fact that more people were concerned about the dog than the dead baby. It's annoying. Like and then they kept using the damn dog. Like, pick a lane. Come on. What are you? Are you a joke show or are you a serious show? Book Cheese is worse too. He does not kick a dog, true, but he does not have a dog. And he's the one who tells Maelor that his mom wants him dead. I would also suggest that Helena show more courage, more strength in the book by offering her own life to save her son. Offering a piece of jewelry is just not the same. I concur. As I saw it, the Sophie's Choice aspect was the strongest part of the sequence. The darkest, the most visceral. I hated to lose that. And judging from the comments online, most of the fans seem to agree. And this is kind of where the shots fired start coming in. You know, there were a lot of people online the last couple of days that were like, oh, he's just going to like criticize changing things. He's not really going to attack any one person. He loves Ryan. Ryan's doing this. There's that gray area chick on Twitter that thinks she knows everything, talks about how Ryan's the savior of these shows. She doesn't know a damn thing. She acts like Ryan Condal is the one that wrote all of it. This is George's story. Ryan did a good job helping write the first season. We now understand that Miguel Sapochnik actually might have been a pretty big part of that first season. But whoever was in charge in that first season sure as hell ain't in charge now. Because here we go. When Ryan Condal first told me what he meant to do ages ago, back in 2022, I argued against it for all these reasons. I did not argue long or with much heat, however. The change weakened the sequence, I felt, but only a bit. And Ryan had what seemed to be practical reasons for it. They didn't want to deal with casting another child because children can be difficult to deal with on set. And budgetary reasons is basically what the rest of that paragraph says. And that they, just because they didn't have him now, doesn't mean that they wouldn't have him in the future. You know, Helena could give birth later. Sure. Budgetarily, that kind of makes sense. But how much, oh God, this is going to be terrible. How much does a 2-year-old child actor really cost? Like how much? Go down to the reject pile of the Gerber's Life kids and throw $20,000 at some parent? I'm sure they'd love to have their little kid in House of the Dragon. He doesn't have to do anything other than lay there. What's wrong with that? And then they talk about the issues that it makes with like on set, you know, crying, stuff like that. You've already got 2 toddlers on set. What's one more going to do? Like you've already got 2 little kids in the scene. They're only in the scene. Like you wouldn't even have had to have seen Maelor. You know, during that first episode, you see Aegon playing with Jaehaerys on the Lannister's back, Thailand, I think. You don't have to show Maelor a lot. Maelor could have just been off scene, and then all you need is him to lay quiet for 10 minutes while you shoot the damn thing. This is a very weak excuse, in my opinion. I think Ryan really shot himself in the foot with these excuses. I still love the episode and Blood and Cheese sequence overall. Losing the Helena's Choice beat did weaken the scene, but not to any great degree. Only the book readers would even notice its absence. Viewers who had never read Fire and Blood would still find the scenes heartrending. Maelor did not actually do anything in the scene after all. How could he? He was only 2 years old. Exactly. There's another aspect to the removal of the young princeling. And once again, everyone, spoilers alert. There's going to be spoilers here. And this is the reason I think why he removed the post. I think because he gives spoilers not to the book, but to what Ryan has told him about what they're going to do with the show. Sometimes between the initial decision to remove Maelor, a big change was made. The prince's birth would no longer just the prince's birth was no longer just going to be pushed back to season 3. He was never going to be born at all. The younger son of Aegon and Helena would never appear. Let's talk about the butterfly effect. Now, why does it really matter? Why does it matter that you don't have a 2-year-old on your show if he doesn't really do anything? Well, because there's like 3 or 4 things that his existence affects. It affects Helena. It affects the death of the Kingsguard at the bridge, and it affects honestly, it affects Jaehaerys. Well, not Jaehaerys. What's his name or her name? I forget how to say her name. It's in here somewhere. Jaehaera. That's right. They're twins. So as we all know, the butterfly effect, you step on a butterfly in the past and you change history forever. So changing one little thing, like not having Maelor, changes the whole show, changes the rest of what their entire plan is. Maelor is a 2-year-old toddler in Fire and Blood, but like our butterfly, he has an impact on the story all out of proportion to his size. George could have written that a little bit better. The readers among you may recall that when it appears that Rhaenyra and her Blacks are about to capture King's Landing, Alicent becomes concerned for the safety of Helena's remaining children. Well, why wouldn't you? It takes steps to save them from smuggling them out of the city. Kind of the opposite of what we got at the end of season 2. It's Lars that gets concerned for Aegon, so he smuggles him out of the city. So William Fell is commanded to deliver Princess Jaehaera to the Baratheons at Storm's End, while Maelor is given to Sir Rickard Thorne to be escorted across the Mander to the protection of the Hightower army on its way to King's Landing. Rickard Thorne being a ancestor to Sir Alliser Thorne, who was such a kick in the ass at the Wall for Jon Snow. Willis Fell delivers Jaehaera safely to the Baratheons at Storm's End, but Sir Rickard fares less well. He and Maelor get as far as Bitterbridge, where he's revealed as a Kingsguard in a tavern called the Hawk's Head. And there's this really great fight. It's not described like I think the whole fight is like 2 or 3 paragraphs. I can't really remember, but it's not described to the detail that would be in Game of Thrones or A Song of Ice and Fire. But when I was reading it, I was able to sit there and picture this like really great fight obviously at a bridge. Sort of reminded me of the Lays of Rome, where Horatius held the bridge so that the Romans would, I forget who they were defending Rome from. But the whole idea was this great like final act of valor, something that you could actually see the oath of the Kingsguard take place. They weren't all jackasses and assholes like Jaime and Kristen Cole. You know, you get to actually see a devout knight exercising his oath of office. Like that would have been great to see. We got a little bit of that with the twins fight in episode 2, but a chance to see it from the side of the Greens would have been great. And honestly, it kind of would have helped make the Greens a little more sympathetic. Will any of that appear in the show? Maybe, but I don't see how. The butterflies would seem to prohibit it. You could perhaps make Sir Rickard's ward be Jaehaera instead of Maelor, but Jaehaera can't be killed. She has a huge role to play as Aegon's next heir. Could maybe Maelor, a newborn instead of a 2-year-old? But that would scramble up the timeline, which is a bit of a mess already, especially when you consider the fact that Aegon hasn't exactly been very active the last couple of months. Like, I don't know. The ability to do that seems to have gone away, doesn't it? Burst, as he so eloquently described in, I think it was like the 6th episode. I have no idea what Ryan has planned, and that another shot across the bow. The writing room is in place. They are literally meeting as we speak, and he doesn't know what Ryan has in store for season 3. He's the writer of the book, and they haven't talked. Remember, like back in June, I think it was. Martin put out a not a blog saying these are all my plans for the next like 2 or 3 months. Oh, by the way, the writers' room for season 3 is meeting, and I will not be there. Like, again, stack all this stuff together, and it's just shot after shot after shot against Ryan Condal and the HBO creative team for changing so many of these big tent poles in his story. Let's see. But given Maelor's absence from episode 2, the simplest way to proceed would be to just drop him entirely. Lose the bit where Alicent tries to send the kids to safety. Drop Rickard Thorne or send him with Willis Fell so Jaehaera has 2 guards. So if they end up putting this fight, the fight of Bitterbridge, in the show, they're going to have to stick it. They're going to have to give both Kingsguard to Jaehaera, and one of them is going to have to die while the other one survives. I mean, that's the only thing they can do. But it's not nearly, especially when you consider that Maelor dies at Bitterbridge. He gets torn to shreds by the crowd. Like, he's like 2.5. Like, that's obviously if you're not going to film a baby getting beheaded, you're not going to film that. But that's another like shot to the system against the Blacks, that they just keep removing every single thing that makes the Blacks look bad. They clearly want Rhaenyra to be the good guy. And that, honestly, that doesn't bode well for season 3, because Rhaenyra is not a good person. There's a reason certain things happen, and it's because she's not a good person. I'm not going to tell you what they are, but there's a reason they happen. From what I know, that seems to be what Ryan is doing here. It's simplest yet, and may make sense in terms of budgets and shooting schedules. But simpler is not better. The Bitterbridge scene has tension, suspense, action, bloodshed, a bit of heroism, and a lot of tragedy. Rickard Thorne is a tertiary character at best. Most viewers, as opposed to readers, will never know he is gone, since they never knew him at all, but I rather like giving him his brief moment of heroism, a taste of the courage and loyalty of the Kingsguard, regardless of whether they were black or green. Exactly. I mean, who else was sitting there watching the last episode of season 1 when which one was it? When one of the twins, I forget which twin it is, gets on his knees and swears toward the queen. Like that, I just remember that moment. You've got the Targaryen theme going on in the background. You've got Daemon sitting there holding his brother's crown. And he turns and presents it to his wife, to his queen. And you get that impassioned moment of the Kingsguard. And I want more of that. You know, the Kingsguard have these incredible stories, these incredible knights that have fought both in for different houses, but ultimately for their king. Their stories, Barristan Selmy and the Smiling Knight, Sir Duncan the Tall, fucking what's his name? Arthur Dane, the greatest knight to ever live. Like, all of these stories there's a reason the book of the Kingsguard exists, and it's the Lord Commander of the Kingsguard job to update it so that these stories aren't lost. They're important, and this is the kind of thing that would have been in that book. The butterflies are not done yet with us, however. In the book, when the word of Prince Maelor's death and the grisly manner of his passing, and I love that he cites it too, page 505, if you want to go read it, reaches the Red Keep, that proves to be the thing that drives Queen Helena to suicide. She could barely stand to look at Maelor, knowing that she chose him to die in the Sophie's choice. And now he is dead in truth, her words having come true. The grief and guilt are too much for her to bear. And here again, here's one of the reasons why I think he took it down, because this is a spoiler. In Ryan's outline for season 3, Helena still kills herself for no particular reason. There's no fresh horror, no triggering event to overwhelm the fragile young queen. And the final butterfly follows soon thereafter. Queen Helena, a sweet and gentle soul, is much beloved by the small folk of King's Landing, like Rhaenyra was when she was young. Rhaenyra was not. So when rumors begin to arise that Helena did not kill herself, but rather was murdered at Rhaenyra's command, the commons are quick to believe them. It is the beginning of the end for Rhaenyra's rule of the city, ultimately leading to the storming of the Dragon Pit and the rise of the Shepherd's Mob that drives Rhaenyra to the flee of the city and return to Dragonstone, and her death. I think I said a lot of this earlier, but Maelor by himself means little. He's a small child, does not have a line of dialogue, does nothing of consequence but die. But where and when and how, that does matter. Losing Maelor's weakened the end of the Blood and Cheese sequence, but it also cost us the Bitter Bridge scene with all its horror and heroism. It undercut the motivation for Helena's suicide, and that in turn sends thousands into the street and allies screaming for justice for their murdered queen. None of that is essential, I suppose, but all of it does serve a purpose. It all helps to tie the storylines together. So one thing follows another in a logical and convincing manner. Again, you cannot just have these events basically get pasted into the episode without something previously causing it to happen. If you sit there and you're watching, let's take Game of Thrones. Let's look back at Game of Thrones, okay? Why does Robert ride north? He doesn't just come north at the beginning of the show to see Ned. He comes north because Jon Arryn has died. He comes north to ask Ned Stark to be his hand because his hand died. Why did his hand die? Well, because Jon Arryn discovered that Robert's sons and daughter are bastards. Ned Stark ends up getting hurt by Jaime Lannister in the streets. Why? Because Joffrey sent someone to kill Bran, and the Starks thought the Lannisters tried to kill him, which literally a Lannister did. But again, cause and effect. It is the driving point behind storytelling. And it looks like all we're going to get is a whole bunch of effects. Where are the causes? Why should we be upset that this happens? You know, I had a lot of hope for House of the Dragon, especially after season 1. Season 1 was, in my opinion, one of the best shows, one of the best seasons of television in a decade. It was genuinely my favorite show of 2022, and honestly still is one of my favorite TV shows or seasons of television ever. And to see the issues that Ryan Condal and the HBO were facing, both with the writer's strike, with the decision to cut episodes out of season 2, with my, let's call it, assumptions that because of the writer's strike and the small amount of time they had to do rewrites for things, the decision to elongate certain stories like Daemon's story in Harrenhal, I still, until I see otherwise from Ryan or someone in the know, I do think that some of those storylines were supposed to wrap up sooner, but they had to spread them out so that they could stretch the story into 8 episodes without needing the gullet. And now these words from George that clearly show he doesn't approve of Ryan's changes. He doesn't approve of not really being asked anything. Let's see. What will we offer the fans instead once we've killed these butterflies? I have no idea. I do not recall that Ryan and I have ever discussed this back when he first told me that they were pushing back on Aegon's second son. That's a big deal right there. So Ryan's entire decision to basically change up the story clearly has come after talking to George. There's been no conversation between George and Ryan about, hey, I kind of want to do this. Do you think this will work? We need to do this because of this, this, and this, which is, it seems like it's the reason why Maelor didn't exist in the first place. But to just remove him without even talking to George, holy shit, that's a problem. Now, for those people online who think George wasn't roasting Ryan Condal here, you're batshit crazy. I don't know how you can read this and think he's not upset at Ryan. We do know from other interviews that George has done that he is actually pretty excited for Night of the Seven Kingdoms, that Ira Parker is doing a good job. He's really approved of Madsen Tomlin. We read that little bit of the interview earlier from him. So overall, I'm still excited for Night of the Seven Kingdoms. Ryan Condal has an executive produce credit on it, but that don't mean jack shit. This is Ira Parker's show, and Ira is working with George. So I'm excited about it. I'm still excited about Aegon's Conquest. I need to watch the Terminator show to know whether or not Tomlin can write in a universe that exists. We'll see. Everyone, I gotta go. This wasn't going to be a very long stream anyway. Drop your thoughts. Let me know what you think, and don't forget to like and subscribe. Adios, guys.